Okay, we've got about a 2.5 pound ball of clay. It's been wedged and prepared, and we're going to try to get that as close as we can to the center of the wheel. And we're going to put a little bit of water on it so we can begin centering the clay. Probably the most important step in making a good pot, or anything on potter's wheel for that matter. And it's probably one of the most difficult things for a new potter to learn. Everybody always has a tendency to try to muscle the clay around. And the only thing that's going to get you is sore joints. Should allow the weight of your upper body to press against the clay rather than trying to move it with your arms. I'm going to do a couple of lifts, and the purpose of this is to get all the clay particles moving radially. Okay, that looks pretty good. Next step is to open the clay up, and again we want to try to make sure that we keep the clay centered on the wheel. So use both thumbs, and we press down to within about a ½ inch of the bottom. The way you check this is to take the needle tool and stick it through the clay and measure, see how much clay you've got in the bottom, and that looks about right. So we're going to get the clay wet again and start opening it up. This 2 pounds of clay will make about a 7 or 8 inch pot, depending on how much lift I want to. One of the more difficult aspects of making bonsai pots is the fact that you've got to cut a lot of holes in the bottom of the pot, and it has a tendency to set up fracture lines and allows the pot to crack. And the best way to guarantee against that is to compress the bottom by using a rib and really pressing down on the clay, and it compresses all the clay particles and just makes it more firm in the bottom. Okay, now we're ready to make our first lift. A little water, and we want to come underneath the edge, and we're going to have our fingers about a ½ inch apart and make our first lift as far as that'll take us, and compress the rim and make our second lift. And again we'll compress. And I think we're going to make one more, so I'm going to take my thumb and kind of undercut it. This should be the last lift. Okay. And there's really two aspects of the pot: the upper section, and then the foot. And most of the work on the foot is done after the pot has been dry and is done with a trimming tool with the pot upside down. But I like to get my basic form set on the pot at this point, and I use a little tool that I made out of a piece of plastic that's got the form cut in it, and we use that to kind of rough the foot in. This pot is going to have a rolled cut foot. I'm going to take a rib and kind of clean the sides up a little bit, smooth them out, get a little bit of the slurry off of them. Come back in and take one more pass on the bottom there. Clean that up. Okay. Now I want to take, I think I'm going to make this rim a flat. So I'm going to take my finger and compress this rim down. And then I think I want a little bit of a feature in the side here. And this is where most of your, if you're going to texture this pot or put any kind of ridges or anything in it, this is where you do it. And again, it's another little wooden tool, and I'm going to cut a ridge right underneath this rim. Take our sponge and clean that up a little bit. Now we'll start shaping the pot. So we're going to take a little rounded rib, it's a real soft rubber rib, and start expanding the pot from the inside. And you kind of go at this slowly, and no matter what you're doing, you always want to keep the pot as concentric and centered as you can, so you don't want to knock it out of line. One of the things you have to be careful of, and this goes back to getting the pot too wet, too much water in it, is that the clay has to be able to support the weight. As you can see, we're hanging way out over the foot, so you want to keep it as dry as you can to keep the clay from softening to the point where it just collapses on itself. I think I'm going to raise this rim up a little bit. Okay. Now, last thing I want to do is we want to clean the rim up a little bit. We use a little piece of wet chamois cloth and compress the rim. And the other thing that we want to do is, because we're going to have this pot upside down on the wheel later, we want to make sure that the top is perfectly parallel with the bottom. So by pressing down, compressing the rim, and smoothing it, we get the top and bottom parallel. Okay, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to clean out the inside a little bit, get some of the water out of it. I'm going to take one last pass, make sure it's running good and concentric. Clean up my bat a little bit. And the last step is to separate the pot from the bat. We use a cutoff wire, basically a piece of piano wire. And while the pot's turning, we slide it underneath and cut the pot off the wheel. And that pot's ready to start drying.